Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the HireMyVA Team and Business Building Podcast brought to you by ugozi.com. In this podcast and HireMyVA, we help you to reclaim your freedom through hiring and thriving with virtual assistants without breaking the bank. And that is the most important bank, though, is your bank. Not my bank, it's your bank. So I'm Dave Braun. I'm here with Larry Broughton, who's my partner in all things coaching. Larry, you're a fantastic business mentor. You help coach me in life. You help coach me through these podcast episodes where we're recording. And thank you for being my brother, my friend. Tell
Hello,
everybody
handsome
hi.
David. Hello,
Hey,
handsome Dave. How are you?
fantastic.
Good. I was thinking back over the last 3 podcast recordings that we did.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this one a little bit differently, I think, because the topic that came up a couple times when we were talking about burnout was the idea of therapy.
Oh, yeah. That's this one. If you guys have heard that, hopefully you've listened to it. Therapy is very powerful. So that leads us to our topic and our question. This is episode 132.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, as an entrepreneur, I want to be at my best. How do I go about finding a therapist for entrepreneurs? And Larry, I think this is not just for entrepreneurs, really. That's really the question. It's for really everybody.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to say before we get going is that I think I've made a mistake and never gone to therapy. I wish I would have, like earlier in my life. It's like, why? Because I know for many, many years I've needed it, but I haven't gone to it. And that's one of the things that I've recognized that I need some therapy on a couple of things in my life. So, but then you've been smart, a lot smarter than me in this, and recognized that for you to be at your very best, that you have needed some outside help.
Well, let's keep in mind, though, Dave, I would argue with you that you may not have done one-on-one talk therapy with someone who's a licensed clinician. However, there is no replacement for that, of course, because some of the stuff that we deal with, you do need someone who's been trained in it. But in some ways, you've been part of a mastermind. You've been with an accountability group where you actually people do help you walk through challenges that you're facing. And so before we kind of go too deep in here, I got to tell you, I was very anti-therapy for years and thought that it was a sign of weakness and only crazy people did therapy. The first time I really committed to it, I won't go into great detail, but I'll just tell you this, that the therapist, I guess we'll get into a little bit later, but he said, hey, when you first came here, Larry, this is after we were in it for about a year, he said, the first phase was triage.
Oh, okay.
You got to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Right. The second phase was like physical therapy. Okay. We're going to make you stronger. And then the third phase is peak performance.
Okay. That's a great way to think about it.
Exactly. So you got to think about it that way. Right. So you don't need to be totally broken, in the fetal position in the corner and not being able to function for therapy. Right. Particularly in the entrepreneurial space. I know, so, you and I both do a lot of executive coaching. And remember in the early days when we were doing masterminds, it was all about the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right. It was all about the balance sheets. It was all about, inventory turn. And then we started realizing, well, Jiminy Crickets, a lot of the problems that these people are having are outside of the space. And so we turned into a little bit, not formal, not licensed, but almost like a therapist sometimes, helping people hold the mirror up a little bit and then developing an action plan to help them out. So I'll tell you this. I was having dinner the other night with a buddy of mine who's a former Navy SEAL, and we were talking about this topic about therapy, because I'm doing a couple forums right now. For those who don't know, my son was killed in a car accident a couple of months ago. And so I'm trying a bunch of different things right now. And so obviously the topic came up. So why don't we kind of go through this, Dave, and about, I think the question is, how do you find a therapist? As you said, for an entrepreneur, right? But I think it's for anyone, right?
Yeah, I think it would.
The most high-performing entrepreneurs I know have done or are doing some form of therapy.
Yeah, I think it would apply to everybody. I guess you could also think of it as, like you had said, a coach in maybe some area. And that's really what a therapist will be, is a coach in maybe an area that you feel is holding you back.
Sure.
Or that you feel like it will hold you back if you don't get through it, or if there's some major trauma. I mean, that's for me personally, I'll just tell you, for me personally, I think some stuff that I have is rooted in, people pleasing, which is so common among everybody, and want people to like me. Now, it's one of those areas where I think it's holding me back a little bit, but that's one of the things that I'm going to need to explore with somebody. I really want to.
Yeah.
Because it's about peak performance, like you talked about.
Well, let's kind of dive into this. I would recommend, this is again based on my experience. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a clinician. I'm just sharing with you some of my experiences, personal experiences, and experiences that we've heard from some of our clients and friends and associates and those types of things. But I think, Dave, it's like hiring any outsourced expert. If you're going to hire a contractor to do work on your home, you're going to interview them, and you're going to, like what we talk about, slow to hire, right?
Yeah.
Take your time and find the right person, unless it's an absolute emergency, like you need someone now, and you've gotten references, you've gotten referrals already. Then I would say take your time, interview some of these. You can talk to them on the phone or go in. And be clear of what you're looking for. What are your core values and what are their core values, right? Because you're going to want to make sure that those are kind of shared. So, for instance, I'm going to be really I'm going to exaggerate here for a second, right? If you are a pacifist and you go in and you find a therapist who's a total warmonger, or you guys might have different views, right?
Yeah.
If your religious faith is really important to you, and the person is a hard-nosed atheist, you may have a difficult time connecting, right? So I would really identify, what are your core values, what are their core values, and if it's important or germane to what it is you're going to therapy for, I would make those kind of non-negotiables as you're going through that. What do you think about those, Dave?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense, because really, when you think about it, Larry, I guess having a therapist or being in a mastermind or a coach, whatever, they are going to be part of your team to help you perform better.
Yeah, and you need to hire them just like they're a new team member.
Yeah, you really do. So it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, so find out what is their area of expertise. If you're going to therapy, as you said, you were using the example of being a people pleaser. You might want to say, hey, I think this is my issue. Or you say, hey, I think it's related to sexual trauma that I've had. I think it's related to post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
You really are going to have to find out from the therapist, is this an area that they're an expert on? But Dave, one of the things that differentiates the good from the bad is price point. Price is definitely something that you have to consider when it comes to therapy, because the truth is that therapy can be really expensive. Some therapists will take insurance, but others are going to be absolutely private fee-based. And some things that you need to figure out is that in some states, if you use insurance, then the confidentiality aspect between patient and provider is sometimes negated.
Oh,
you need to be aware of that. So like your records could be subpoenaed if you use insurance, because there's a waiver in there, right? If you look at the fine print, not all states, some states. You just have to be careful with that. So some are insurance, will take insurance. Some are just absolutely private fee-based. Some will have a sliding scale based on your own income. So you need to talk about that. If they don't take insurance, Dave, and they don't have a sliding scale, I have seen where junior practitioners in their office might be available where they have an expert supervisor. That might be a way to make it a little bit more affordable. If you're in a spiritual community, many pastors, priests, rabbis have a background in at least marriage and family counseling. They
Mhm.
may not be licensed in it, but there's some kind of training or certificate that goes along with it. I'd make sure that you consider that stuff as well. I know that I'm just shooting from the hip here.
Yeah, I mean
That makes sense so
yeah,
far?
that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. Now, I one of the things, Larry, and let me know what you think about this is
Yeah.
if we're hiring a team member to help us in our business or whatever, then generally we will get recommendations or we'll have somebody help us search.
Yeah.
So would you still recommend doing something like that for you?
Absolutely. It's just like a lot of it's going to come from your gut, but I would go with somebody you trust. Birds of a feather, right? Tend to
Mhm.
flock together. And so if you've got a sexual trauma and you've shared that with someone else and they may know someone, um, but oftentimes, yes, ask for recommendations for sure, if it's appropriate, right? If it's the first time you've ever shared it, you're going to have to find somebody. Don't be afraid to go to someone. If it's not working, go someplace else. I can tell you the first couple of therapists, or first at least 3 that I went to, I didn't connect with. I felt like they wanted to hear more stories about whatever my life than they actually wanted to help. Remember one guy I forget what the type of therapy is, but he wanted me to like role play and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I shouldn't say crazy stuff. It felt crazy to me, and it wasn't where I was at the time. And I just didn't feel comfortable with it at the time. Like now I'm willing to try just about anything. I've done it, enough over the years. What I like to say, my friends, is that I'm not who I used to be. Okay. Because I have changed. Right.
Yeah.
So yes, Dave, I think you really do need to have recommendations. The great thing nowadays is that there's Yelp and there's all kinds of online reviews for
Mm-hmm.
folks. I wouldn't get so wrapped up necessarily in education and background. Yes, there's value to it, but I've gone to licensed clinical psychologists and found they were okay. And I've gone to other people who are whatever the ranking is below that, and they've been better. You just have to go out and try a few different people. Like you want to test drive a car, crying out loud. I hope that you're not saying, "Oh, I'm going to go get a new car today," and you've done no research, and you go buy the very first car you ever sat in. It's not a smart way to go uh, about therapy. You know.
So one of the things that we do in the Hire My VA program is typically when you come to us in the white glove services, we'll give you 3 candidates from which you can choose.
Yeah, sure.
And it seems like you would want to have that same approach with the therapist. Maybe try to find 3 people, and would you recommend going to like a session or 2 with each of them and then
Yeah,
choosing, or what do you
you
think?
got to find what works for you. Okay. Um, I end up, as I said, I think I've gone to 3 different ones over the years. And in the beginning, when I didn't know a lot about it, the first one I went to, I didn't. I went to 2 sessions, thought it was a bunch of crap, and so that was my excuse. Oh, therapy's not going to work for me, right? But if I use that same example, like I test drove a car and didn't like the car, and I'm never going to drive again. Look, I drove that car and it didn't work. That's an excuse, is
Yeah.
what you're doing. But the other thing, Dave, is we need to keep in mind, like right now, we've been kind of alluding to like just talk therapy, one-on-one talk therapy, right? Sometimes that's exactly what we should be doing, but not always. Straight talk therapy might not work for
Oh,
you, especially for those who've tried it in the past and it hasn't worked, right? There's art therapy, right? There's mindfulness meditation. By the way, you can find all this stuff on YouTube. What is art therapy? How do I do it? There's like groups that do this.
mm,
There's group therapy, right? There is like recovery programs out there. There's animal assisted psychotherapy. You've seen service animals, those types of things, right? But there are a lot of people who find that talk therapy either isn't enough or it can only get them so far. We need to pay attention to other aspects of our brain, Dave, and our hearts and our bodies than just the rational thinking, verbal part of it. One of the things that I've started recently, I've had 2 sessions so far, is EMDR therapy. That might be new for a lot of folks. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Basically, it uses the same process you have in REM sleep.
Okay.
Right? And it's a psychotherapy that allows folks to heal from the symptoms of emotional distress that comes from disturbing life experiences. It was really associated, or the success of it was associated for folks who were experiencing post-traumatic stress from military service or from sexual trauma. And now it's used for a lot of different things. So I would really encourage folks to consider EMDR therapy if there's been a particularly traumatizing situation in their life.
I've also heard of tapping.
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of people have some good success with that.
Yeah. Dave, another thing to consider besides the tapping and the talk therapy, and I've seen this advertised, I've not done it. I do know someone who has used these, is that when you consider that some of the biggest barriers to talk therapy is the cost and the social stigma, right?
Yeah.
If somebody knows I'm in therapy, they're going to think that I'm crazy. But there are alternatives to that. The two that come to mind one, I know someone who's used, but I've seen advertisements for both, is Talkspace and BetterHelp. They're apps,
Okay.
right? Where you do remote therapy sessions through secure video chat platforms or through texting platforms.
Okay.
And so the cost is much cheaper, right? And I've heard one kind of describe it as it's kind of like a therapist in your pocket, right? Because you can do it right from your phone.
Well, that makes sense, though.
Yeah, and so people that are traveling a lot, like the one person I know that uses it, it's on the road constantly, and they've got some issues with flying in groups and being around people, but that's what they have to do. That's their career. That's the business that they have, and so they've always got that person kind of in their pocket. So that's something to consider. The interesting thing is, Dave, I think the stigma that used to go along with mental health 30 years ago has been diminished greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier now than ever to access therapy, again, through group therapy, through recovery programs, through religious institutions at your synagogue or at your church, through masterminds. There's so many ways to help with your mental health. So I'm encouraged. As I said, I don't know many high performers, Dave, who are living their life of significance. Their business is performing well. Their romantic life as well, who haven't or aren't doing some form of therapy.
Yeah, that makes. Yeah,
it's as important as working out or eating the right foods.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Larry, there's so many choices. I think that was a good analogy. Eating the right food. There's so many different foods we can eat to get ourselves healthy. There's so many different types of workouts to be healthy. People swear by weights or aerobics or tennis or whatever. So there's so many different types of therapy that you talked about. How would somebody just get started? Would you pick one? Would you do some research and see, this might make the most sense, let me look into that, or just try them out? Or how would you go about?
You're gonna have to find what you're comfortable with at first and what your budget can afford. I'm one of those folks where I'm almost a little embarrassed to say this. I'll pay the most that I can afford at the time for it to get the expert, the most. I want access to the highest quality treatment that I can get based on what my budget can provide at the time, right? Not that just money equals expertise. You've got to do a little bit of research, right? So I don't have a blanket answer for you, Dave, because some people may have to ease into this. They may be like me, like I had to do group recovery stuff first, right? Going to a 12-step program and realizing, oh, wow, this actually, didn't feel comfortable at first, but I'm feeling more comfortable with it now. And then going there. and asking lots of questions to everybody. Become a student of life. Had I not, I'd heard about EMDR just through, I don't know where I even heard. I heard about it through folks that I know who had been really suffering, is the right word, suffering through post-traumatic stress, and they talked about EMDR therapy. And so then I asked my therapist about it. And he said, "Oh yeah, there's somebody in my practice that's what she specializes in." So I did some research, talked to her on the phone, went in, did some research. Yeah. But there's this thing, Dave, that you may never have heard of before. It's called the internet, the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
I know it's a fad. But I would just start searching, identify, like the question had to do with therapy and entrepreneurs. Right.
Yeah.
So put, mental health for entrepreneurs, mental health practitioners for entrepreneurs in my area, talk therapy, whatever it is. I would start there. But you've got to have, this is kind of a life thing, Dave. I would start talking to people that trusted allies of yours, not necessarily friends. Did you catch that? Friends aren't always allies.
Yeah. So you're basically saying somebody who will ask you questions and tell you the truth.
That's right. Friends don't always tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And allies will have your back. Okay. So if you have professional mentors, I'd ask them. Your mentor is not worth their weight if they are not willing to share this stuff with you. Or if they say, I don't know, I've never done this before. I would have never considered it. Like, okay, maybe we need to talk. Do you have a referral for me? Don't be afraid to ask for referrals.
Okay.
And I would start there.
Okay. Final quick question that I think you can answer, hopefully quickly, is how do you know that it's working, that you should keep going or try something different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Over time, you should be able to sleep better, breathe well, pressure is taken off. You're not flipping your lid over, the things that, you used to feel. Like I could tell you years ago when I started this, I mean, my kids were saying, "You seem happier." I've had team members, like ones that have been around for a long time, who make comments on it.
Okay.
You're not as stressed. You're not cutting people off in traffic like you used to. It's just like a pressure valve has been released a little bit.
Okay.
And believe me, and I should say this, if you're having suicidal ideations, you must reach out to someone. Okay. There are suicide hotlines that are out there. They'll never know who you are, but you can at least start the process. And I'm going to say it again. I'm not an expert at this. I've just been through it. But suicidal ideation is, if you are having suicidal ideations, you have to get help. There are too many good things in life for you. There are too many people that you need to serve. This is a season that you're in right now. And if you feel like this has been, this is my life, then you really need to reach out. You really have to. Totally. The great thing is that when you're on the other side, Dave, because I've been on the dark side and I've been on the light side, right? And there's sometimes where you get really comfortable in the dark side and we almost revel in it, right? Because what we know, right? But being on the light side is the best way I can describe it. It's much better over on this side than on the other side. And I remember the first time when I was really deep and dark, Dave, when I just had the only way I could describe it is there was a vapor. There was just a vapor of peace. There was a glimmer of hope. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'd never felt that before, It was enough to encourage me for a long time, So I started searching for that, right? The sense of worry starts to go away. The temperature goes down. Anxiety levels drop a little bit. And I guess I would be remiss to mention that you may just need medication. I'm not a big one on pushing medications first at all. Oftentimes physical, the effects that you get from physical exertion, exercise, where you get hits of dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline in your system, Oftentimes those are equal to, the effects that you get from cocaine, for
True.
instance, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
get a high from it. And I don't know a therapy that's worth their weight either, that they're not going to recommend, okay, just come in and just do talk therapy with me once a week, Dave, and then
Mm.
we'll fix it. They're always going to be asking, the good ones are going to be asking about your diet, about your exercise, about your sleep. It's part of a holistic approach
Oh, that's good to
to
know.
mental health.
That's really good to know too. Good
Yeah.
advice on that.
All right.
All right.
And again,
Thanks,
my
Larry.
friends, I got to say it one more time. I am not a
Yeah.
licensed clinician. Okay. Do the research on your own. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Makes sense. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this really cool discussion we had about therapy. And it really is a great idea for you to get to your maximum potential. Just to maybe at least have a coach talk to somebody in some way or form to think through. Maybe there's some barriers that are keeping you from getting to your full potential. Like I feel like mine are. I've got a few, I think. But remember, to help you get your potential, there is a key way to do that, and that's building a team. And it is the way to reclaim your freedom. And of course, we're here to help you with our course and community and our white glove service, where we find a rockstar VA for you. So 3 things we'd love for you to do, and we'd really appreciate it. Number 1, subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already done so, either on your iPhone, your Android phone, also do YouTube. Hit the subscribe button and click on the little bell next to it to get reminders. The second thing is give us a rating, preferably 5-star. Leave a comment below this video on YouTube, anything. It helps us get the word out. And then number 3, go to HireMyVA.com for more information on a course and community and our white glove service. And remember, even without experience, you'll learn how to prepare for, hire, and thrive with virtual assistants. And Larry, we're enjoying helping a bunch of folks. We want to help you guys too who are listening if you aren't already in our tribe. So just go to HireMyVA.com for more information.
Yeah, and I'll just remind you, folks, we love you. We really do. We want to serve you. And mental health oftentimes begins right here in our own heads. And if we allowed other folks to speak to us the way we often speak to ourselves, we'd slap them, right? So start putting more positive stuff into your brain. And remember this, that there is no higher calling than serving other folks.
That's right.
Okay. So God bless you. God keep you. God hold you. We'll see you on the next time. All right.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.